right, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. I lost track of time. Worked all day. I had a very busy day today. And I'm talking, it's the first anniversary of the media and police conspiring to kill an innocent young woman, put in harm's danger, not kill, but allow an innocent young woman to be killed in Charlottesville. If the police obviously wanted that to happen, otherwise they would have stepped up. They were looking for a reason to discredit the president, and so they created this whole issue, made a mountain out of a molehill, really. But I heard that today there was a small group of protesters, again calling themselves by the same name, Unite the Right, in front of the White House, I believe, today. Interesting, today I met our congressman for the second time, our current congressman. Very wonderful experience. But the point that I really want to bring out, I feel is excuse me, absolutely necessary to bring out, is that these groups calling themselves Unite the Right, so forth, are really the enemy of the right, and they're really leftists, essentially. Not to say that they're actually teaming up with the left. The conspiracy might not go that far, though it might. But it's not really conspiracy, it's just a fact of the difference between what we could call perhaps the European right versus the American right. And I've made many videos discussing this. But the fact of the matter is, as I've said before, what's considered the right in Europe has much more in common with what's considered the left in America than, as well as the left in Europe, than what's considered the right in America. The American right essentially are the true liberals. They're the classical liberals. They actually embody what the term liberalism means. If you study the history of the American right versus the American left, all of these racist groups, like Unite the Right, quote unquote, have their roots in the left. And they haven't shed those roots. And really, neither has what's traditionally seen as the American left are really just two sides of that same coin, or perhaps two prongs of the same fork, essentially, whereas the right is all the way on the other side of the fork. The American left and European left versus the European right and the alt-right in America are actually the same. They're both on the left. And the American right, which is more based in liberty, classical liberalism, libertarianism, and equality in a true form, and a colorblind society, is all the way on the actual conservative side. There's nothing conservative about racism. Racism is a left-wing idea. It's an old European idea, and everything really on the left are vestiges of the old European ideas, whereas the American right has a totally different approach. And to try to equate in some way the president and the Republican Party with these quote-unquote the alt-right or European-style rightists is just foolish and empty and silly. I'll give some examples. First of all, let's look at history. I know people say, well, things changed. They didn't change. People think they changed. They didn't change. So, what in history, we know that we can't argue with. There's no arguing against this. Historically speaking, it was the Republican Party that freed the slaves, and it was the Democratic Party that enslaved people. It was the Democratic Party that, after the slaves were freed, created the KKK. It was the Democratic Party that invented the Jim Crow laws and enforced them and pushed them. It was a Democrat president that signed into law equal rights laws by a Republican Congress. All of the Democrats in the both houses of the legislature, the vast majority of them were opposed to all of this. Now, where did the change happen? Why? What? Where? I mean, look in the progressive era. The teens, the 19-teens, 1920s. The darling of the Democrats, Woodrow Wilson, was a horrible racist. The president that the Democrats would say was one of the worst, when, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most of the American right today, and has been for a long time, was probably really the best president we had in the 20th century. Even better than Reagan. Reagan looked up to him. Was Coolidge. And Coolidge fought strongly against racism. Not just that he was indifferent. He was strongly opposed to racism. And he was also strongly opposed to big government. And obviously we know Woodrow Wilson was the opposite. Woodrow Wilson was the big government guy. He was the guy who was saying, the Constitution is a living and breathing document. Now, the Constitution is not set in stone. It is malleable, but it's not living and breathing. It's very difficult to change the Constitution for a specific reason, because it's such a great Constitution, and it's not meant to be toyed with. And we had these experiments in the progressive era. Prohibition is one. That's the one example that's thankfully was repealed. The only amendment to the Constitution that was ever repealed. But another example would be, I would say, the 17th Amendment is probably one of the stupidest amendments that we have to the Constitution. And it's really due for repeal. Because look at all the idiots who are in the Senate. There are maybe like 3 or 4 good people in the Senate. Ted Cruz is very good, probably the best. Rand Paul is really great. Ted Cruz is really great. I can't think of too many others in the Senate that are really even among the Republicans, that are really statesmen, In the House we have more. But in the Senate, it's very, and why? They get stuck there for 6 years, and then they get reelected. And it was never intended to be that. It makes a redundancy that serves no purpose. They're supposed to be representatives of the state legislature and represent the people by virtue of the fact that the legislature elects them. And to have direct election of senators, it doesn't defeat the whole purpose of the Senate, but it defeats a large purpose of the Senate. And particularly because of the fact that the House was the one that's supposed to represent the people, and so that's why it goes by population, and the Senate represents the states. And so we wouldn't have dummies like Gillibrand and evil people like Chuck Schumer if we had the 17th Amendment. If we didn't have the 17th Amendment, and also we wouldn't have a dummy like Judge Roy Moore running for the Senate on the other side. You know, I mean, it goes on both sides. So, you know, these are the type of things that we have to reflect on. But it's quite amazing, to be honest. You know, could you imagine if the Nazi Party said, you know, we're changing our whole platform, but we're still calling ourselves Nazis? That's basically what the Democrats did. You know, to still call themselves Democrats, it shows that they didn't actually change their platform. And it's true, because the identity politics of the left are in order to divide and conquer and to pigeonhole people, restrict people from having upward mobility, and keeping people in their Democrat-controlled ghettos so they can basically be enslaved for votes. You know, it's and it goes the other way as well, as far as how the Democratic Party operates with illegal immigration. Again, why do they push for both illegal immigration and a higher minimum wage? Well, it's to, first of all, rob American citizens of jobs, or law-abiding citizens of jobs, and give the illegal immigrants, because they're not going to be paid this higher minimum wage. No one's going to pay illegal immigrants $15 an hour, right? And they can get away with it because they're breaking law anyway, hiring them. And so essentially it's really the modern day slavery. I mean, they're paying them something, some kind of a pittance, and in order to keep the other people also stuck on welfare because they're not going to get a job. You know, no one's going to hire an entry-level teenager at $15 an hour, you know, working at McDonald's. So all of these things go together and create this planned, designed way to destroy the family structures and essentially re-enslave big groups, as opposed to the Republican ideology that is, I don't care what color your skin is, you're free, you could go get a job, you know, make a living. You know, I saw myself, you know, since, you know, when I graduated college, graduated seminary, I had a nice full-time job, $50,000 a year. President Bush was the president, right? And then President Obama came in, and like literally, like, you know, a couple of months into the Obama presidency, you know, I couldn't find a job for, you know, I was making like $15,000 a year, you know, maybe $20,000 a year if I was lucky, you know. And then it was like that throughout like most of the Obama presidency. You know, maybe I made, if I was lucky in a year, $25,000-$30,000 a year. It was on all these programs, food stamps, Medicaid, Section 8, which are all big headaches. And finally, you know, President Trump came into office. Things started to get a little better. You know, started making a little more, got a better job. And now, like, I'm not on any of these programs anymore. I'm making much more, you know, than I ever have in my whole career. And I have a future, God willing, you know, and it's like a whole different thing. And so, like, how anybody could want to destroy that, and obviously they want to destroy that because they want power. It's like the president said, you know, his winning the presidency wasn't that he won, it's that we won. The power went back to the people, and these people on the quote-unquote alt-right are not the answer. There's nothing American about, you know, their ideas. They are for all the things the Democrats want: big government. Hi. You know, Richard Spencer doesn't believe that powers come from God, that there's inherent powers. He believes that power, that rights come from the government. He doesn't believe that rights come from God. It's these type of things that show us that really essentially these, quote unquote, alt-right, whatever, are really just all right. So, these are the type of things to remember. All right. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share. But essentially, these groups are the enemies of the right. These groups, Unite the Right and whatever, are the enemies of the right. And they're the enemies of America. And these are just pawns. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't that, like, George Soros was really funding, quote unquote, Unite the Right. And that the whole thing is phony. Because it just smells like that, like it's like all set up like that. That's not, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. All right. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment on the